Hello everyone, and welcome to, can you believe it, our last video lecture of the semester for spring of 2024 in Persuasion and Social Movements. I am pretty excited to be here. I'm sure you are too. Hopefully over the course of the last, 5-6 weeks, you've been working on your second papers and getting ready to wrap this up for yourselves. Hopefully you learned something along the way. And hopefully the book was easy enough for you to read and the practical experience was easy enough for you as well. Today we are wrapping up talking about how social movements often are resisted. And your book really, despite all of the different various italicized words that there are, really gives you 4 responses. So when we're talking about social movements either succeeding or failing, a lot of times it depends on what they're pushing up against. Because remember, at the beginning of this class, we define social movements in a lot of ways by their opposition. Usually their opposition being a government institution or some other social institution that we uphold through our language that we want to either change, eliminate, or in some way expand and augment. So we know what the goal of a social movement is. We know how they form. We know how they function. The question is, how do they fight? So in order to understand that, we must look at what opposition they might encounter. Your book, as I said, gives us about 4 responses that generally social movements have to work with. And it's interesting because, as you know, throughout the last 16 weeks, I've been trying to use my own social movement that turned into a nonprofit as the example. And we've had some pushback from the institutions here, particularly when it comes to schools. We've actually had some pushback from state level entities who have tried to find a way to fight against us. And we have enjoined ourselves with some organizations and institutions in order to get more things done. That, however, does not mean that we have laid down and said we achieved our goals, because we definitely didn't. And I don't know how long we will. But as I was reading the book, I was coming up with so many more examples in my head. For example, the current strikes at the US, or the current rallies at the USC, and there was another university, I don't remember which one it was. And then also we've got the labor union workers' rights working against Amazon and how they have responded. And so I was like, oh, I've got all these different examples. So you might hear me throw in a great many more examples today than I normally do. And hopefully that will help you out. As you wrap up your semester, as always, if you need something, send me an email. I do have, I think, like a couple of emails that came in over the weekend from all of my classes, so I don't know if any are from you. If they are, I will be dealing with those tonight and tomorrow. All right, let's finish up this semester. So what kinds of resistance do social movements face? How does the government or other social institutions answer the calls from social movements? Well, one way, and we see this a lot, but you don't realize you're seeing it, is to flat out ignore the social movement. So your book literally says, pretend it doesn't exist. And some social movements, some institutions and some particularly corporate organizations will definitely do this. They will just pretend it's not there. One of those fights that I saw this happen with involved Walmart, because of course it did. There were a lot of people fighting against having a Walmart put at the intersection of Grand and Campbell there just off of campus, because they felt that the city stores would all close down. They fought it for several years. This movement did, and Walmart just kept saying, keep taking us to court, we'll keep, winning. And ultimately they did. And the social movement was also right, by the way. You will not find a grocery store on the square or down in that area at all. anymore. There used to be 2, actually, believe it or not. So that did come true, but Walmart didn't need to do much with this particular fight. Why? Well, for one thing, despite the fact that there were 2 grocery stores there that were within walking distance of each other, there were still a great many food deserts areas over in Grant Beach and north that really could not get to those stores except by walking or taking a cab, and that was just too expensive. But see, when the Walmart went in, then public transportation went in as well, in the sense that they started covering that area of the city with more opportunities to catch buses, get closer to Walmart, so instead of closer to the stores, and so on. So pretty frustrating, honestly, what happened there, but it's a great example of a company just pretending that there's not a fight to be had, and not acknowledging the fight that the social movement wanted to have. The second way that they really talk about is with counter persuasion, and this is really when you're trying to just beat back the social movement by suggesting to everyone that they're wrong, that the social movement isn't worthy of being listened to, that it is somehow derogatory towards others or will have detrimental effects, or in some way that they can persuade you, the audience, that the movement is not valid, or they're wrong, or they're not good enough to listen to, or they're too small, or they're a fly-by-night operation, or the general public actually prefers whatever the institution wants to do. That one's very common, to say the public wants this. And social movements are small, so they're loud. But when it comes to polling numbers or public support numbers, that's not something that social movements are great at most of the time. It's a small percentage of the population, probably potentially the majority of the population agrees with you, but they won't come out and identify with you, which, as you know, is part of what makes a social movement work. The third is coercion. And this is where I was talking about Amazon. Amazon, I heard this story, I think it was on NPR today. Amazon has started saying that if you try to unionize, you'll lose your job. If you try to unionize, we'll close the plant down and move it to another place. In other words, you literally threaten the social movement. In this case, we'd be talking about a union, which is a pretty formalized social movement, right? But the truth of the matter is that most of the time, companies like Walmart and Amazon, they don't have to. They don't have to worry about social movements getting in their way. Generally speaking, they have more power and more money than a social movement does. So a social movement needs numbers somehow. It needs large numbers of people and perhaps a somewhat sympathetic institution as well, which is where we get to the fourth strategy. The fourth strategy of adjustment is where both sides concede something. And through those concessions, they are able to come to some sort of cohabitation agreement where the institution and the social movement work together in some way. Now, I've seen this happen. I don't know whether this counts or not, but I'm gonna try to roll with it. One of the things that we found in the fight against removing DEI from classrooms, from CRT arguments, from librarians having to justify their existence when books keep disappearing off the shelves, things of that sort. We realized that we were greatly outnumbered in the local area. Okay, in Nixa, not Springfield, in Nixa, these people don't want this battle. They just don't want it. They will do anything they can to get out of the battle. And by them, I mean the school district in Nixa. And so what they do is they refuse to make concessions, but they make some decisions that are conciliatory, but they won't acknowledge that. So one of the biggest things that U-Turn in Education has done is we've had to recognize when those conciliatory movements have been made. And I won't say that they're reconciliation, they are conciliatory in the sense that they realized, oh crap, that's probably the right idea. And so I always brag by saying that when I ran for school board last year, between last year and this year when I ran again, 5 major policies in the Nixa school board changed. I won't say they completely flipped, but they were modified extensively, and for a lot of things that we in my movement were asking for. Now, on a larger level, fighting against the government of, let's say, the state of Missouri is more difficult. The ACLU has come out, and with the Missouri Association of School Librarians, which is MASL, so I'll refer to it as MASL. The ACLU for MASL went up against the government, is suing the state of Missouri for, I think it's SB 775, if I remember correctly. That bill, were it to become law, in which it did actually become law, as it becomes law, says that there are books, and by the way I read it, and I don't think I'm being over exaggeratory here, I think a lot of people might agree with me. The definitions that they put into 775 would make the Bible illegal to be in the library. Like, literally. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, dude, I'm not a good Bible reader, okay? My husband thinks that the Bible is nothing that needs to be around. It's great for stories, but that's his limitation. I know other people who follow it to no end. None of us think that the Bible should be taken out of the library. Is it the most read book in the entire history of the world? Yes. Yes, it is. Does that mean it shouldn't be in a library? That's crazy talk, right? We would never do that. We would never remove it. Well, in Utah, they tried. And in Utah, they said, fine, this law, it bans the Bible. So they took the Bible out of the libraries, and all of a sudden, people started to realize maybe this bill might need some tweaking. And that's what MASL's trying to do. It's trying to get the state to understand that the way they've written the law is so exclusive that there are librarians right now who are just doing nothing else but sitting at their desk in some school somewhere in Missouri, and they could be arrested. That is a little bit too coercive. That's borderlining on violence. It certainly is defamation. So MASL is suing through the ACLU, because MASL can't do it itself. It gets the ACLU on board. The ACLU agrees to file the suit against the state. In a similar manner, what we have done at U-Turn is we've hooked on with a state organization known as the Right to Read. We've hooked on with the PEN America, which is a national organization and has a program called Freedom to Read. And we are able to use those organizations to say, we have all these numbers behind us. No, they're not all in Nixa, Missouri, but they're in the state of Missouri. And here's the interesting thing. Nixa is the only school district that MASL and we and the government can find that is verified, that it has disavowed MASL. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that they have decided that because MASL is suing the government, the state, that we should therefore disavow MASL, But our teachers are still required to belong to a state librarian institution, which, by the way, is Mazel. But the school refuses to pay for it anymore, your membership, which is about $90 a year. Not a big deal there, but still, it's money that the school should be paying. And they refuse to allow you to take time off or use funds to go to conferences, and they refuse to acknowledge it as professional development. Well, now you're in real trouble. Because in addition to that, the school still uses Mazel standards to evaluate libraries and librarians. And if you don't have a paid membership to Mazel, you can't get a hold of the things that you need to meet those standards. So what the school district has done literally is put every single librarian in a bind of either spending their own money and sick days and personal days or whatever you want to call them, not getting paid for them, and then shelling out money to do professional development for a school district that won't even recognize it. And it's either that or leave the school and find a different job. It's either that or get fired. So there are a number of coercive practices that are happening in the Nixa school district that aren't happening on a grander level. So U-Turn Education has to somehow find a way to help the district, help the school district. This is how I look at it. We need to help the school district adapt to what the rest of the state is doing and to the common thinking amongst a lot of Nixons has become Nixonians. I don't know what we are. I was this close the other day to pulling the trigger on a house in Springfield, and I had my husband looking at the house. That's how far we got, which is saying something, because he doesn't want to move. He never wants to do that again. He wants to be, die in this house sort of thing. And I understand all the reasons why, but apparently I made a compelling enough argument that we need to get the hell out of this conservative crazy place, or I'm going to lose my mind by buying a home that is reasonably priced that we'd have some equity in by selling our home. And I found it. I found the perfect house. And I'm not kidding you, it had come on the market 11 minutes before that, if you can remember, if you can believe Realtor.com. So maybe it's sold already. I don't know. It was a really good deal from what we could tell. And I actually had him looking at it twice. That is impressive, because that's how crazy things have gotten here in Nixa. Now, most likely I'll be staying here. I'll be honest with you. And so if I'm going to stay here, I need to make sure that our school district, which is the only thing holding this town together, and it used to be one of the best. Now it's not really there, but it used to be definitely one of the best, and we want to make it the best and keep it the best and keep it from slipping, right? And I have a vested interest in that if I'm stuck here, as I say. So whether you're in an area where you have the numbers or not, you are still able sometimes to get the institution to adapt. And sometimes you, as a social movement, adapt. So here's what we've come up with. We are still going to the school board meetings, the library board meetings, everywhere, still trying to preserve freedom of expression, intellectual and artistic freedom. We are still trying to make sure, though, that our librarians are given the tools that they need in order to do their job. And if the school district won't do it, we will. So we are currently raising money to pay the $90 a year for every single librarian in the Nixa school district. Now, that's only 12. But you do 12 times 90, and you've got a little chunk of change that we need to raise. And we're almost there. The other thing that we want to do is establish a scholarship fund for these individuals to go to conference, professional development and conferences if they want to. And so what all they would need to do is tell us how much they need, where it is that they want to go, why they want it, why it's important to them, and we will help in some way help with those costs in whatever way that we can. And in fact, I'm so excited. I don't know if I'm allowed to announce this or not, but I won't say the name, so maybe that's it. But to you all, I trust you enough. We are actually going to grant $500 to a recent graduate of NICSA who goes to Davidson College, I think it's still a college, down in Georgia, I believe. Maybe it's North Carolina, I don't remember which. But she was accepted to speak at the American Library Association's National Conference to talk about something called SABRE. SABRE is Students Against Book Restrictions. And they formed, I'm going to say, without us almost, because they didn't want a whole lot to do with U-Turn because of the reputation of U-Turn, and these students had to exist in schools. So what we did is we said, whatever resources you need, whatever help you need, please feel free to ask us and we will help you. And we did. We helped a few students here and there who needed it, and they formed this group called SABRE, and now they're sort of the lead person for SABRE is now going out to the American Association National Conference. I believe it's in San Francisco. And obviously her university is giving her some money, which is fantastic because she's going for work that she did here in NICSA. They're giving her a chunk of money, and then we're going to supplement another $500, hoping that we can help her and encourage her to go to conferences and travel to share the good work that she's done and that her group has done. I wish we could pay for all of them to go. I'll be honest with you. I really wish we could. But we cannot. But that's one of the ways that we and the school district adapt to coexistence, right? And that's the point, isn't it? At the end of the day, if you start a social movement with the idea that you're going to take over, that will fail. It will not fail. Remember that politics is the art of the possible, not the art of the guaranteed. So in this type of political speech, that's especially true, because your work has to be visionary and attainable, but it also has to be something that you can live with in whatever area you're at, with whatever institution that you are fighting with. And that's what this final chapter about the book is about, in my opinion. It should be about only that. I'm not a big fan of reading about coercive tactics, but the other side does use them. I'm not a huge fan, I'll be honest with you, of counter-persuasion. I'd rather be ignored or adjusted to. Because if you're ignoring me, I still have a chance at being adjusted to and somehow brought into the discourse, the public discourse between the social movement and the organization, institution, or entity that they're fighting against. So I hope that helps a little bit. I am excited to read your papers over the course of the next couple of weeks. Remember that your paper 2 is due on May 10th. May 10th. Yes, May 10th. And I'm looking forward to reading it. If you need anything, as always, email or call. And if you sent me an email and I didn't respond by tomorrow afternoon, please text me and let me know, because that probably means that it's missing and somehow, you know, my email decided to lose it. And it does it a lot, I'll be honest with you. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Please fill out the teaching evaluation form, if you would not mind, on Blackboard. That does help me a lot. If I could get you all motivated to do that. I'm not really sure how to motivate you. I can't give you points for it. I'm not keeping track of who does it, but if you get a chance, please fill out that evaluation form. I do read them every single year, and I adapt the class as much as I possibly can. And I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you all at some point, I hope.